You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast, joined by the venerable John Schuster and the precocious Ben White. I am merely Mike Luke. All right, guys, we have got a ton to get to this show. The comments coming in hot and heavy. Anthony Humbert, I agree with you. It's these moral victories are they're tough, but we're going to start with the good right here because, quite frankly, there's a lot of good stuff to take away from this game. First and foremost, I don't come away from this game thinking that there's a huge margin between these two teams. Shu, you messaged me that during the game that Arizona, you could make the case is better. Arizona shot themselves in the foot time and time again. We're going to get to all that. But considering everything that happened, this was a pretty, I think, inspiring performance considering how Arizona got down and where they were able to get.
I hope Wildcat fans have refills on the ready for their heart medication. Because Arizona is 100% entertaining, 100% maddening, and this is what you're going to get all year long. You're going to get hashtag what are you doing, and you're going to get hashtag yay. Keep doing that. The Arizona, if you do the old, hey, these teams played 10 times, I think Arizona wins 7 of these games.
I agree.
I think they were the better team, and they were, and one of the areas that I think was more impressive. And before we get too carried away here, Mississippi State's decision to completely change its offense helped Arizona defensively a lot. But that as an aside, Arizona still caused all kinds of havoc on the defensive line, and I think was better on the offensive line too. And that's an important distinction. And you expect that against NAU. You're going to see it against UTEP. But Mississippi State, which is, going to be a middling team in the SEC, still has SEC talent. And Arizona, I think, was the better football team, and that says a lot about where the program is headed. Is it frustrating? Yes. Can you turn the ball over 4 times? Clearly, you can't do that. And this is going to be a constant, it looks like, element of conversation. You're going to have a quarterback who is going to be a lightning rod because he does make great plays, and then he makes bonehead plays. And trying to work your way through that is going to be something that either the Arizona football program, he's going to have to make necessary improvements, or Arizona fans are just going to be dealing with this, and the football program is going to be dealing with this for his tenure here. And it's one of those things, especially when you're in some nip and tuck matchups, where if you make mistakes like that, you shouldn't have any, you're going to lose close games. Now, again, at the end, he makes a great play, but he doesn't, or which is nullified by about 6 inches in a situation. It's not a whole hell of a lot you can do about that, but not a whole hell of a lot you can do about that. It's kind of like Arizona's mantra. But if you look at the 2 plays earlier, if he makes 2 good passes, you're not in that situation. And that's kind of one of the things that I think you're going to deal with this dynamic overall this year.
Yeah, but I think the problem, though, guys, and Ben, I'm curious to your thought, and then Shu, back to you, is that with JDL, and again, we're going to get to the defense, because I think the defense was absolutely outstanding. Shu, I thought you hit the nail on the head when you said they made good adjustments. They showed that. But JDL now is in his 3rd year as a starting quarterback at the Power 5 level, and there are just too many, let's just be honest here, dumb things that he does that make absolutely no sense. Those picks in the first half almost were terrible. And then when he threw the interception in the 4th quarter, he should have just run for that first down there, Ben.
Yeah, what's so frustrating about it is, he's been a Pac-12 college football player for 3 years now, and he still hasn't quite figured out that line between being aggressive and just being in check, right?
Right.
The 3rd down play is a perfect example. Take the ball, run it. But to me, the offensive line gave him plenty of time all game to make plays. The running game was there despite some challenges early. But Jayden de Laura, for whatever reason, he can have somebody 5-6 yards down the field. He can have plays right in front of them, but he's going to do whatever it takes, it seems like, more times than not, and especially in this game, to get those extra 5 to 10 yards. And when you do that, when you take those risks, when you throw into double coverage, when you don't take the wide open lane up the middle where you can rush, it's going to do more harm than it is good. And as a result, you saw 4 interceptions from him, 3 back-to-back essentially there in the first half. And you can't do that this far in. You can't do that against a team like Mississippi State on the road. And I think that's what's so frustrating about it is the whole team played very, very well. I think the defense did a heck of a job, which we're going to dive into. The offensive line gave him plenty of time to make plays back there. Even though sometimes the pocket did collapse, he was able to extend plays and be smart. But he's got a lot of good things, but those bad things just come at the worst possible moments. And tonight was a perfect example. You needed to take what the defense was giving you. And more often than not, what was so frustrating about it in key pivotal moments, he wasn't doing that.
And Shu, what's frustrating too, I think about it, is that you can tell, especially on the offensive side of the ball, there's a lot of talent here. Ben talked about how the offensive line kept him upright. Now, granted, he had to run around some. The receivers are tremendous. The old saying of live to fight another day doesn't always seem to be something that resonates with de Laura.
It's an excellent point. I think it's something that, when we're out here talking about it, it's not nearly as easy to recognize that, especially in the fast twitch element of what's happening. You get into these conversations where it's like, quote unquote, big moments, but every mistake, and I don't mean to pick on Ben here, but every mistake is a big moment when it happens. You don't know, here's a play at 3rd and 7. If it's an incomplete pass, all right. Settle.
But you know what I mean, though. Long third down, you needed the score. That's big moment. But absolutely, every turnover is going to hurt you.
So obviously you can't have 4 turnovers, regardless of when those happen. Right. And you have to be, a little bit. Yeah, I think, Mike, you're kind of touching on it here. That whole next play mentality is something that remains very difficult for him because he's an extraordinarily confident young man who believes he can make plays and has made plays like that all his life.
And he's a talented quarterback. That's the thing.
Yeah, and that's it.
Dealing for the void of talent right there.
That I think is the problem. There's never going to de Laura is hopefully always going to believe that he can make a big play. The problem is that sometimes you just have to make a good play. Yeah. And even if the good play is 8 yards as opposed to the big play that you think is going to be 35 and get you on the highlight, screw the highlight and just keep the ball moving.
Right. And then, Ben, when you talked about it too, where, he the play where, he forces it into double coverage right there, that to me was a huge problem because, again, you had 10 yards of open space in front of you. It's the knowing when to run. And I have no problem with him running on that last play of the game. I think it was kind of apropos. They didn't get it by a half yard, but I have no problem with that. But at the same time, though, when you're throwing into double coverage, and I don't want to hear the part about, well, it was tipped or whatever. No, I mean, that's part of the throw right there is you probably don't want to throw it to a defensive back that can tip the ball right there. Again, there was a lot of good stuff to take from this. One thing that we do need to talk about for just a brief second, if you could bring it up right here, Jacob, the A player of the game or whatever it is. T-Mac is a monster. T-Mac is an absolute, 9 catches, 161 yards. That's what an NFL wide receiver looks like right there. He looks different than everybody else out there. Had that huge Hail Mary catch at the end of the game or at the end of the first half. When you got dudes like that, you got to let him make some plays there, fellas.
Yeah, you have a plethora of not only receivers, but really, really talented guys. And I think, not to hate too much on JDL, but that's what's so frustrating about it is it's not like you don't have the talent and you don't have the pieces to keep the ball moving and make big plays on the offensive side. But, I think T-Mac's a perfect example. When you need to go deep, he's there. When you need to get chunk yardage plays, he's also there as well. But, the JDL thing is weird in a sense that he is a great, talented quarterback, like we've talked about. He can do a number of different things for you. You definitely would rather have him than not have him. But I just get the sense that he goes out there on certain downs and says, this is going to be my home run play. This is what we're going to do. And I don't care what it takes. I'm going to throw the ball 25 yards down the field. Hate that mentality. You've got to realize that you've got to take what the defense gives you and stop playing like there's no tomorrow. And I think
go ahead,
Mick. Yeah, right. No, just stop playing like there's no tomorrow and you can be a little bit reckless, and like, I love the being aggressive, but just to be stupid and reckless against a team like this, you're not up by 3 or 4 touchdowns. I mean, this isn't the Patrick Mahomes practice, part of practice where we get to, design some crazy plays and have some fun. No, you're playing in a big time game on the road against an SEC opponent. So you've just got to be smarter than that. And if he doesn't have these turnovers, circling back to what we said earlier, I think from a talent standpoint, Arizona looked like the better team, did they not? I mean, all around, I think
thought they were.
If JDL plays better, they could win by 10 to 14 points, I think, in this game if we don't shoot ourselves in the foot. I think it's very possible.
There's a lot of good stuff to take away. Shu, I wanted to get you to touch on something Ben just brought up, though, where because I was kind of noticing that as well, and I noticed it last year. Do you think there's just plays with Jayden de Laura where he's already synced in on, I'm going to do whatever the defense is, I'm going to make this pass right here?
For those who were viewing the television broadcast, this was brought up early in the game during either interception 2 or 3, where the announcers were suggesting that Mississippi State had a tell on de Laura. That de Laura maybe was at a stage in his career where he wasn't looking off receivers, or you had an idea of where he was going with the pass, and it seemed to be something that they were able to capitalize on. Whether that is something that other teams recognize or whether it even exists is something that we might find out throughout the course of the campaign, because again, he still made some big plays and he got some open, and he's got some talent around him. So, whatever Mississippi State may have thought it saw in the first quarter, didn't necessarily see in the next 3. But it's there. It also is that it's hard to get a gauge on here. And I think he is going to be a point of frustration. I guess the quarterback very often is, but we are in an interesting time where you can see the talent and you can also live the frustration. And so I'm curious with you guys, I mean, what do you do about it? You're not going to bench him, are you? He's going to be the starter next week, isn't he? And he's going to be the starter for most of the year, isn't he?
You're not going to bench him, but I do think there has to be a point where this isn't Keith Smith out here. This isn't a player that deserves, I think, the benefit of, no matter what happens, we're going to ride with you on that one. Keck, you'll like this. It's not like you got Jake Plummer out there or somebody like that exactly what they can do. That's the question, though. Because you can't. I mean, let's be honest here. And I'm going to let you guys think on this real quick, but let's first get to the BetMGM. Let's get it to BetMGM read. Now, I was telling everybody all week that I liked Arizona to win. Now, if you took it for me, you should have said, Mike, we're just going to take it to cover, and you would have had easy money right there. Now, check it out. Sign up for BetMGM. Use bonus code PHNX. Place your first BetMGM sportsbook wager through BetMGM Sportsbook mobile application of at least $10. You will receive $200 instantly in additional winnings, regardless of the wager's outcome. Let's hear from the great Shane Diefenbach.
Problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus to wager. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., New York, or Ontario.
But see, guys, when it comes to JDL, I don't believe that he has the credits built up to be where we're just going to ride with you all season. Now, again, I'm not saying don't start him, but if he's got another 3 interception first half, I think you got to at least see what Noah Fafita can do back there.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, you go.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, right, I mean, this is a 3-point game. You're going into overtime. If Arizona's getting blown out and they're down 21-28 at the half, I think it's a completely different conversation. To me, JDL, for better or worse, right, I kind of think he is who he is at this point. And, memory's going to be short. You're going to play UTEP next week. He's probably going to throw for 500 yards. But if this becomes a pattern, Mike, where he's doing this in big-time games against schools like Washington, schools like USC, I think at that point it's fair to have that conversation. But just the way the game played out, it definitely worked out in his favor. So it's a complicated answer for sure. I can't really give you a straight answer on that one.
And maybe that's going to be the difficulty.
Straight answer.
And maybe that's going to be the difficulty overall as well. You're looking at, because the most popular guy on every football team is the backup quarterback.
No doubt.
And we know that the backup quarterback's got a lot of talent, but we also don't know in big situations, what he's going to be able to do either. It's nice to have him in the fold. But I get the feeling that, and I'm not necessarily against it either. I get the feeling Arizona's sticking with de Laura, and they're going to stick. Sure. But I am curious if they were to go in a different direction. Is this a program that can afford taking the risk of taking a step back? In terms of, because they're obviously progressing. And again,
right.
I'm not sure that this is a conversation we had last week. I'm not sure they have 6/7 win talent, but I'm not sure they're going to win 6/7 games because they happen to be playing a lot of teams in this conference that have 9, 10, and 11 win talent. And games like this where you move forward and then back up a little bit kind of suggest that you're gonna. I think there are a lot of teams on the schedule that are ultimately better than Mississippi State, and if you're turning the ball over 4 times against them, even though Arizona's better defensively, are they going to be able to stay in a game where they're giving up, in regulation 24 points against some of the upper tier in this league? I'm not as convinced that's going to happen. And then you're in a position where you're 14 down, you're 17 down, and, it makes it just a little bit more difficult to get back into it. So obviously Arizona has to shore things up. And again, you guys are right. There's a lot of positives to take out of it. The overarching aspect of it is that Arizona was a better football team than an SEC team on the road and had an opportunity to win a game and probably should have won that game. So if you can take that positive out of it and try to grow from it, then you again feel better about where the trajectory is going. And that gets into the difficult aspect of the conversation as to whether you want to pull a quarterback or not.
Right. Now, let's talk about the defense here, because there was a lot of good things to take away from that. That's for you, Anthony Humbert and Shane Robertson. We got to talk, first of all, about my guy, Big Bill Norton in there. Big Bill Norton was awesome in the first game. Looks totally different than everybody else on the line because he's about 6'4", 360 pounds. But Schuster, after that first 3, and Ben, after those first 3 drives, this defense performed admirably across the board, from stopping the run to the passing game. Sure, there was a couple missed tackles, and that was definitely a huge missed tackle in overtime off the screen pass. But overall, though, if you told me going into this game that this defense was going to be responsible for only 2 touchdowns, yes, please.
Especially considering, too, how long they were out on the field, especially in the first half when the offense was giving them no chance, turning the ball over with all those JDL interceptions. They did phenomenal. I mean, Norton was the main guy up there. Upshaw got in. Martell Irby, who got a scholarship. I know he didn't play much in the second half, but he had some big-time tackles there back in the secondary where they were shorthanded today. This defense passed the eye test, and that's what we talked about last week against NAU, where it looks improved. It looks better on paper. It looks better, certainly, looking at them on the screen, but how are they going to do against a better opponent? And today, they held their will. And I think that's what you're seeing with this Arizona program in general, is when you have a solid foundation on the line of scrimmage, both the O-line and D-line, that gives you a lot of room to do some different things, both good and bad. And to me, I think the point that maybe some folks aren't really thinking about big picture or may go a little bit unnoticed after this game is, to me, that O-line and that D-line is the reason why this is a 7-point loss and not a 21 to 24 point loss, Mike.
Schuster, what do you think about the defense right here, just in large? Because again, before the game, you kind of called it. You said, I think that it's basically going to be something where you might struggle initially and then they figure it out. And that's exactly what happened.
Before we get to this, I'll do our friend Jose a little bit of a favor here, because Jose says that he believes that this team is good enough to get to a bowl game. I agree with that. I think Arizona is so we're talking about a semantics issue here, just to be clear. I think Arizona is has 6 or 7 win talent. That's good enough to get you to a bowl game. But I look at the schedule in the conference, and it becomes a little bit difficult for them to get there, because I think a lot of the teams that they're going to play are better. Doesn't mean Arizona isn't going to get there, but sure. I do think it's a difficult obstacle. Winning this game would have helped them, obviously, quite a bit to get a little bit closer. That's all. In terms of the defense, you have to feel good. One of the things that I think we've seen in 2 games now is that Arizona seems to go into the scouting report throughout the course of the week knowing what it wants to do, gets into the game, things don't necessarily work as well as they're supposed to, and then they get reminded about what was in the scouting report, do necessary adjustments, and improve significantly. The first 7 or 8 minutes of this game, you're thinking, holy crap, this is going to be 38-10. And this is Arizona is going to get slapped around. This is a wake-up call. They've still got a long way to go. All of those things. And despite throwing 3 interceptions in the first quarter, on the road, in a game where they probably should have been blown out early, the defense kept them around because the defense did the adjustments necessary. And they've got the talent upgrade that has allowed them to improve. Now, I don't expect them to hold every team they play. I think it's silly to expect, with the offenses and quarterbacks in this conference, to expect defenses to hold, the Arizona defense to hold the upper echelon in this league to 24 points in regulation. But this was a very good performance. And again, Arizona, I think, was better on both sides of the line, and their defense gave Mississippi State all kinds of fits. Again, Mississippi State is a team in offensive transition, which to a large degree has me completely baffled. They have for some reason decided that they're not going to slow walk moving away from Leach to, whatever other version they have, even though they have a quarterback who's thrown for a ridiculous amount of yards as a result. They're just going to they're going to look for like Oklahoma from 1974. Half the time I felt like I was watching a Bud Wilkinson team out there. And meanwhile,
you're going back even further. If you're going Bud Wilkinson, you're going into the 50s. That's Barry Switzer, at least in the 70s.
And meanwhile, their bleeping coach sounds like he's a contestant on the UFC Contender Series. So he's all about, being tough and trying to get that identity in the running game and the rest of this stuff. Like, use your assets to some degree. So Mississippi State, I think, helped Arizona, but Arizona did an excellent job of locking that down and making it very difficult for that team to move consistently on the offensive end. And it gave them a legitimate chance to win an SEC game on the road.
I want to ask you something about Akina here in a second, Shu. But first, be honest, everybody. When was the last time Ben White and John Schuster went to Circle K?
Today, my friend.
Well, I tried to go to the Circle K at Grant and Alvernon, but it wasn't very successful.
All right. Well, you know what? You could go to a nicer location, the one on Oracle and Grant right there.
That's a great one.
Yes.
Great area.
Join Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit circlek.com for details. Keck, all right. You're an ASU fan, obviously. Yes, 6 wins in year 3, I would be more than okay with, because Jedd Fisch inherited probably as bad a dumpster fire as you could inherit in college football. They had lost 12 straight games, won 1 of their previous 25 games. If you get 6 wins in year 3, I am totally okay with that, especially in a loaded conference, John Schuster.
May I? Yeah. It's great what Sanders into, and it is.
He's not Dion, though.
It's great for the future of the conference, whatever that conference happens to be. Right. With Arizona moving into another league, that Sanders is there and Colorado has been able to do what it's done. But I think the bigger picture for most teams, and Arizona certainly falls under this category here. Do you guys and most of the viewers here feel that Arizona has peaked? The answer is in no way, shape, or form. The cat trajectory continues to improve. They're obviously, year 1 was a mess. We knew it was going to be a mess. It was a mess. Year 2, we saw improvement. Year 3, we're already seeing a team that's significantly more talented than they were in year 2. You keep making, the concern starts to be when it feels like the process is plateauing. And if you look at the 2 most recent successful-ish coaches here, there was a point in time where Stoops had the escalator, and then it leveled off. And when Rodriguez had the escalator, and then it leveled off. The concern is if it levels off, and it feels like it levels off at a point where you think you should be better than that. And Arizona isn't. For Arizona, the escalator is still climbing. Yeah. And so any worries about year 3 this and year that, and all this stuff, Arizona's better now than it was in year 2 and obviously in year 1 of the Jedd Fisch era. So any concerns about where they actually are in regards to some time frame, I think is overall silly at this stage.
What do you think about this, by the way? I saw this on a message board, and I actually like this. JDL is the football version of Kirk Risa, a wild ride of boneheaded decisions followed by clutch desperation plays.
I don't think he's. I don't. Yeah.
But don't necessarily 100% agree with it either.
Yeah, it's probably the way that I would look at that as well. There are a lot of plays that he also makes that aren't desperation. And those are the ones that you hope he continues to make to keep Arizona moving. One of the things that I'm fascinated with as well, and maybe you guys can delve into this a little bit more. Yeah, not that NAU's necessarily a relevant example here, but I'm going to put in air quotes, they only scored 38 points. In today's game, it feels like Arizona has offensive skills to score more than 24 points. That this is an offense that ought to be more consistent than it ultimately is and have the ability to more consistently get into the end zone. Is there something I'm missing with that, or is that almost exclusively, is that on Fisch or is that on de Laura?
Right. I think it's on both, right? It's not the reason they lost today per se, but I think when you look at the players on this roster, and I think when you look at kind of the overall trajectory, I think the issue they've run into is just, it's obviously week 2. And from a tempo standpoint, you haven't really been able to establish a whole lot of that. We know Fisch runs a pro style offense. We know things can get a little bit conservative at time, but at the same time, he will pull some trick plays out of his bag there. I just think it's hard from an identity standpoint. I think they're still trying to figure out, I guess, what they want to be on offense. I think with JDL, it's tough because he can go out there and he can throw for 300-400 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns, have a phenomenal game, or he can go out there and throw for 4 or 5 picks like he did tonight. And when you have such a wild card at quarterback, I think that's the difference when you are talking about the offense and why aren't they scoring more points, is you have a little bit more unknown and wild card at quarterback to be able to go out there and say, this is exactly how we want our offense to operate. I think it's a learning process. And despite the fact that this is, year 2 for JDL, I still get the sense that they're still figuring that part out.
By the way, Shoot, we've had multiple comments about next post game. I need you to promise me something. You need to bring the Colombo picture back. We've had multiple people now mention this. Where has it gone?
Oh, Colombo's here. We'll get Colombo. I am pleased to bring Colombo back into the fold on my next appearance. Happy
Ask and you shall receive.
Yes, that's what we like. By the way, one of the super snaps. Let's pull this up right here. Back the A no matter what. That is the mantra that we got right there. I don't think anyone at Mississippi State expected a game like that. Hats off to the Cats for battling back right there. Very, very good. Very good point right there. Oh, by the way, this is very funny. JDL just stopped it to get Oracle and Grant Circle K.
Oh, no.
I don't know why. That makes me laugh. One thing, we always hear this in football, that you can really figure out which teams are really good by the strengths on the line. And that was always a problem for Rich Rod, obviously. Rich Rod's teams were always kind of puny on the line. There were a lot of Mike Lukes and Ben White suiting up right there. During the best Tomey years, the best teams generally were very solid on both sides of the line, especially the defensive line. You look at 94, you look at 98. You had a lot of pros. You had a lot of All-Americans right there. That, to me, is maybe, outside of the wide receiver spot, the most impressive improvement that has happened in Arizona under Jedd Fisch is the fact that you've got lines on both sides of the ball now that are no longer jokes.
Go ahead, Ben.
No, they're not. They're not jokes. And I think that's what's been so remarkable about this turnaround, the last 2 years, is you've been able to find guys who are legit guys that can go in there, guys who come from a background of either playing at another program or playing at a high level to a point where, schools like Georgia, schools like Michigan want these guys. And you bring in Upshaw, you bring in Norton, you develop other guys on that line. And now you have a nice little cast of rotational guys. And we saw that rotation tighten up tonight. It's Mississippi State. But I think that's the key. And that's what college football is in 2023. And what's remarkable and what's awesome about it is Jedd Fisch has taken advantage of being able to go into that transfer portal, always be recruiting, always bringing in guys. A year ago, I mean, this defense was giving up 37 points a game. Now, granted, it's 2 games in, but pretty impressive stuff tonight. I'd be hard to believe unless there's just catastrophic injuries everywhere or something goes wrong where this defense regresses compared to what it was last year. And it goes to show you when you go in, when you're aggressive and when you're able to, be consistent in the transfer portal and address that, you can get it taken care of pretty quickly. Whereas in the past, you would always have a hard time because the coaching staff, like you said, Mike, A, either wouldn't prioritize it. You would just get a bunch of small guys, or B, you were getting beaten out. It was hard to get guys like that in here. So I think right place, right time definitely has something to do with it. And I think the other part of it is the coaching staff just really making it a point of focus to say, hey, we're going to get bigger. We're going to get stronger up front, because if we don't have that foundation up front, we're not going to do a whole lot as a team. You can have the best receivers out there. You can have the best quarterback out there. But if you're getting blown up on the line every single play, it's not going to do your offense or your defense much good at all.
All right, our buddy P-Posh is on. Our buddy P-Posh is on right here. By the way, John Schuster, do you know what a P-Posh is? This seems like something you might know.
Why? Because it's a phrase from 1881?
No, it's a Native American tribe of the Southwest.
Oh, well, thank you, Mike Luke, for providing us with information.
Yeah, there you go right there. And yes, I agree with a lot of people. All right, we're going to talk about the play calling here. Fair enough. Okay. Jesus VAC. I have a couple problems here. The one thing about Jedd's play calling that has annoyed me over the first couple years is he gets too cute, I think, at times. I think he tries to be kind of the smartest guy in the room type thing. That the double reverse pass from JDL back to Wiley or vice versa. Don't do that. Don't do that. You're moving the ball at will right there. It didn't catch really anybody off guard, and it wasn't close to being successful. Those are the kind of plays, sure, there's a time and place for them, but it never feels like those trick plays under Jedd work.
I think it feels like those trick plays aren't working nearly as much as they used to across college football as a whole, and possibly across the NFL as a whole as well. So go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. And
then here's a couple other things. But I do want to give Jedd credit. Generally, in Schuster, you're right. There was an exception. There were a couple of exceptions here. I would have gone for it on the 4th and 2 right there with 22 seconds left. Fisch obviously felt that his team was better and they could win in overtime. I'm going for it right there. I tweeted that out at the time. But generally, even though he didn't do it in this game, generally, he's a pretty aggressive 4th down play caller, and I love coaches that are generally aggressive on 4th down. Granted, he didn't go for it on 4th and 7 from the Mississippi State 44 or whatever the case may be. But the trick plays, eliminate those. Like last year when they would do the Wildcat that went nowhere, this play was going nowhere. Stop doing it.
Everybody now knows the Wildcat. Yes. And it's not just a team that is the mascot for the U of A. Everybody knows that play. They've got it figured out. They've seen it for 10 years now. They know how to scout it. They know what's happening. You bring in a running back at quarterback and move somebody out, he's going to run the ball between the tackles. Okay, we get it. So that's a play that, that's a play that as football has evolved just ought to be scrapped. And in terms of, and I don't mind addressing the 4th down thing to some
yeah, go ahead.
Too, but the trick play thing, I think, is something that Arizona just doesn't run well. And I think there's a fine line to this. And it's one of those things that I remember. I think Rich Rod, let's use Rich Rod as an example, master offensive play caller. Obviously Arizona had its share of issues during the Rodriguez era. But one of the things that Rodriguez, I think, was exceptional at was understanding the flow of the offense and giving his players opportunities to succeed. And they ran a relatively simple play that a lot of teams run that works. And it feels like a trick play, but it's a fairly simple play that's just difficult to defend historically for some reason. Simple wheel route. You bring a running back delayed into a passing route, and lo and behold, sometimes it's tough for the linebacker to get and make that play. That's about as tricky as I want Arizona to get. Beyond that, you have the athletes there to give yourself an opportunity to move the chains and score. You have 2 6'5" receivers. You have another guy who had as many receptions as anybody else in the conference last year. You have a quarterback who, if he can get smarter, certainly has the ability to make plays. I think Arizona remains inconsistent in its running game, and that's something that it needs to improve. But generally speaking, you have guys on this roster who can make plays, get in space, move the ball. You don't need to be screwing around with trying to be cute. And a lot of that time, that puts you in some difficult positions. I understand some of the fourth down situations. A lot of when we get into these conversations, there's he absolutely should have, and he absolutely shouldn't have. There's a lot of gray area in these in a lot of these circumstances where certainly given the situation, it can go either way. And I thought Fisch on fourth down fell into that category. You wanted him to go on fourth down to see if they can get into the end zone late in the game. I had no problem with them kicking the field goal at that point. I get it. Yeah. And I get both perspectives. Absolutely understand where you're coming from.
But with all due respect,
I was fascinated that they did not go for it on 4th and 7 in Mississippi State territory at about the 45-yard line. That one fascinated me, and that one I didn't expect and felt like I wanted them to go for it there. But I get Fisch's logic. You're playing well defensively. There's nothing wrong with playing field position. If you get 3 and out in that situation, as Arizona had, Mississippi State was having a hard time moving the ball. Arizona had a little bit of momentum. Get the ball back at around the 35 or 40-yard line on a punt, you're in pretty good field position. I get it. It's not the decision I would have made, but I get it. Going for it on 4th and 2 inside your own territory, I thought was pretty interesting. And that was one where I probably would have punted. And he got the first down. Didn't get it by much, but Arizona got the first down, was able to keep the drive alive, and it turned out to be successful. So there are some, I would say that I understand, but he and I wouldn't necessarily see eye to eye in when you go forward in those situations, just as Mike and Ben, you don't necessarily see eye to eye with him and eye to eye with me, and I think a lot of the viewers feel the same way. But in all of those instances, I at least understood the logic, even if it wasn't necessarily in line with what I would have done in a given situation.
Speaking of seeing things out there on the field, Ben White, when was the last time you wore Shady Rays?
I couldn't tell you. Tell me more.
All right, here's Ben. I like that right here. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code PHNX for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized, not polarizing sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. And, oh, geez, after this game, many people, you might be a little amped. You might say, man, I need to get some good sleep right here. OG's multi-flavor bags. Check out our friends at OG's Brands for yourself and try one or a few of their many delicious flavors. Check them out across all socials at OG's Brands and online at ogsbrands.com. You find them at a local dispensary near you. Must be 21 years or up to enjoy. All right, to the ASU people in here. Schuster and I have talked about this for years. Here's the difference between Arizona and ASU. You don't matter nationally in football. We don't matter nationally in football. We matter nationally in basketball. You don't matter nationally in basketball. You can have wrestling. You can have whatever you want right there. Arizona at least has one thing that is a nationally renowned product. Arizona State has nothing. You're famous for having a president that doesn't know what streaming is. All right, go ahead. Sorry, John Schuster.
Oh, it's okay. If you don't mind going back to one of the fourth downs, 22 seconds left. You wanted them to go on 4th and 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Just curious.
Which one are we talking at the end of the game?
Late in the game. We're talking later.
Fourth quarter. You wanted them to go for
the end of regulation.
Yes, because
they settled for the field goal. Go ahead.
Yes, yeah. Because I have a quarterback I don't trust. This is a game that is on the road, and honestly, I don't. And this sounds bad because I know I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I don't really. I don't know that Jayden de Laura has a clutch gene to him. There doesn't seem to be a lot of plays that I look back, a lot of games that I look back and say, man, Arizona won that because of a big Jayden de Laura play. Now, granted, he's going to have to make a big play on 4th and 2. I totally get all that, but I would have gone for it right there. I would have played for the win. I know that
they had 2 or 3 timeouts at that point.
Yeah, 3 timeouts.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Call a timeout right there, then go for it. I don't like playing for, especially on the road. I don't like playing for, especially too, because a lot of times you got kickers that get the yips. I don't trust college kickers, although we do like Tyler Loop on this show. Not Tyler Luke, Tyler Loop. But I would have gone for it there, mainly because I think you have the momentum at that point. I think when you went into overtime, the second Mississippi State scored, and I'll let you guys speak for it from there. I didn't think that Arizona was going to get in the end zone. It just didn't feel like that was going to happen.
See, to me, Shu, and I'm curious your take on this when you say people not seeing eye to eye, the reasons that Mike just laid out all regarding JDL, to me, that's the reason why you kick the field goal. You feel like you may not be able to trust him in that situation. You feel like he might screw up. You run the clock down. Your defense is keeping you in that game. Your running game has found some momentum. You're able to get some guys in space on the receiving side, get some chunk plays, move the ball. You kick the field goal. You go into overtime. You like your chances at that point. But no, to your point, Mike, once that happened in OT, you felt like it was over. But I get why you kick the field goal in that situation. But it's interesting either way.
Yeah, I do too. And again, it's one of those examples where I can see both ways. It even to me is a little less de Laura related. It's one of those things where you feel like you're the better team and you have momentum. And I think Arizona had shown that for the most part, in terms of from a play-to-play standpoint, if you were watching the two teams out there, Arizona was doing more than Mississippi State was. That gives you an opportunity to feel pretty good about how things could go in overtime. So you got to be able to make a 36-yard field goal. He made it easily. You've got the tie. In overtime, also, offenses generally are where things are dictated here. Mississippi State's having a hard time moving the ball. They're pretty one-dimensional, and Arizona has a lot more versatility in that regard. I like the Cats' chances in OT, too. So I totally get where Fisch was thinking. I think he was looking ahead. It just ultimately didn't work. And there are a couple plays in OT that seem to be reminiscent of maybe many of the conversations we're going to have regarding Arizona throughout the course of this year.
OT... and sorry to cut you off, but in OT, you're 2 plays away from potentially winning or at least being competitive in OT, right? It's the missed tackle on that screen pass, and it's the miss throw to Cowing. If de Laura throws it a little bit more to the left, that's a first down. They get in, they win the game
because he had a lot of space in front of him.
Yes,
right there.
He did.
And those are good examples. So Fisch made a calculated gamble that should have worked, and sometimes there are variables that just ultimately don't work in that position. Again, I completely get Mike's take on it. And you've got timeouts to where you feel comfortable, and you've got 2 6'5" receivers. So go for the win on the road. It's an aggressive call. It sets up a character. If you're playing for character or trying to get an identity for the team and believe in your players, all of that makes perfect sense. It's, Fisch in that regard went the direction that I would have gone. But again, I completely understand, Mike, where you're going from that perspective. And maybe it would have worked better for the Cats in that regard.
All right. Jacob Franklin did not mean to put Rudy in timeout. Sorry, Rudy. Okay, come back in, Rudy. Well, whatever. I'll message Rudy. I got a better comparison, and I got a better JDL comparison. Is there a little Shakur in JDL right there? And that you look at him, looks the part, can make all the plays, but when it really comes down to it, you're going to have a lot of dumb plays at the end of the game that probably aren't going to result in a win, John Schuster.
Well, I think the area where I might separate a little bit from the attempted parallel there is that Shakur was never particularly flashy. de Laura is almost all flash. and so there's a very different person. I understand the Kerr aspect of what folks are saying in the breakdown as well, and I can see that. Both of them play for flash. Shakur wanted to be a steady performer. And so I think their personalities are vastly different in that regard.
Did playing coy against NAU cost us the game? Please discuss. See, I don't think so. I think that these turnovers were going to happen either way. And that's why I'm concerned, obviously, about de Laura, because de Laura had 3 or 4 really, really bad plays against NAU as well. Interception, the fumble. Again, is this something that Arizona, and again, I know I'm coming back to the same question here, but it looks like the rest of the team right here is pretty talented. Do you have a leash on him, Shu? I mean, honestly, I don't know. Do you have a leash?
As we have progressed through this show, I can see where the coaching staff is trying to run this through its head as well. Again, I know the backup has talent, and maybe the backup doesn't make as many mistakes, and the backup's better. And but you've still got a trajectory of a program that's moving in a positive direction, and you have a talent in de Laura that's clearly there. So at some point, you're in an interesting situation where, you're trying to figure out, is this just what it's always going to be and we deal with it? Or do we believe that we can't, as a program and as a team, you can't consistently make those mistakes week in and week out? And perhaps a lesson here that maybe works for de Laura is, dude, if you keep turning the ball over, we're going to the other guy. Maybe that's a good psychological move.
Yeah.
Joey McManus, to answer your question, redshirt freshman. Go ahead, Ben. What were you going to say?
Yeah, and I think that's where it's so interesting, where you look at the opponents that they have, you look at what de Laura's done. If this is a pattern, if we're playing UTEP and he's throwing 4 or 5 picks, absolutely. But Arizona, I think what a lot of us didn't expect is the roster as a whole, at least 2 weeks in, is a lot further along than we expected. Yeah. And we weren't necessarily, I guess, ready to have to answer the question on de Laura. We always thought, hey, this team has more talent. They'll be competitive. Hopefully they can get to a bowl game. But man, you're in a game with an SEC opponent on the road week 2, and you're 2 less turnovers away from potentially winning by double digits. I think nobody saw that coming. So now the coaching staff really has to scratch their head and say, hey, how do we go about this? Because he's clearly talented. He clearly can move the ball. But if he's going to cost you in big moments, I mean, he could be the difference between, winning 4, 5, 6 games and maybe winning 7 or 8 and surprising people. And it's just a matter of how quickly and what are going to be the factors ultimately that make that transition. And I don't think it's a black and white answer. I really don't. Just given the situation, given the schedule, it'll be interesting. I mean, we could get to a point where we've beat some opponents in the Pac-12 part of the schedule that we weren't necessarily supposed to beat. And this team is on the edge of making a bowl or doing something bigger. And you might have to make a decision. If de Laura's stinking it up out there, you might have to put Fafita out there and ride with him. So it's a complicated answer. I don't think there's really a black and white answer on this one.
Chase Garcia, to answer your question, I would not start him. I think Gunnar Maldonado is not a good defensive back, but
yeah, get into that. I don't understand why we're playing.
I have no clue. For people that don't know, the one thing about Gunnar Maldonado is he's always been a quarter or a guy who can hit pretty hard, but he is a terrible liability. Not just a liability, a terrible liability in pass coverage. And you saw that in the first drive of the second half, where he comes right back in after being suspended for the first half and immediately bites on the play action and gives up the touchdown over his head. That's just going to be who he is. That's also a coach, or excuse me, that's also something that the coach is going to have to answer right there. I don't get that one at all. I have no clue. By the way, the great Jacob Franklin is apologizing to Rudy Martinez. Jacob Franklin, never do that again. We're big fans of Rudy Martinez on this show. All right, P-Posh makes a great point. By the way, what is a P-Posh, John Schuster?
It's something that you told me a few minutes ago. Thank you. And I appreciate the info.
Southwest.
Right. Yes.
All right. Now, I like this point here. I would make JDL look for the run half the time to cut down on mistakes and to force defense to keep a key on him and open up the secondary. I like that idea. I think there's still too many times where de Laura has 10 to 15 yards in front of him and he doesn't take it. Like you can never, what's the old phrase? You can never go broke taking a gain.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close. I think that was a P-Posh phrase.
That was a P-Posh phrase. Now, what is a P-Posh?
They were the people who invented that phrase.
Yes, for sure. What do you think about that? I think it's a good point, though.
Yeah, I think so, and it's probably that was an interesting comment. I'm looking at the comments on the side, which is a rarity for me. I'm very slowly understanding tech a little bit, and full disclosure here.
You're a radio refugee. It's okay.
Yeah, that I am. Occasionally, our pal Brad Alice is. Occasionally, our pal Brad Alice is on this show, and on other shows with you guys as well. And Brad and I went to the Metallica concert last Friday, I think it was.
Is that where you hung out with Modelo?
Yeah, and I also was hanging out with Lars, who apparently had COVID that night. So who knows? I don't know what strain I have from 722 yards away from the venue, but I could be in trouble. Anyway, we were talking about the broadcasts and so forth, and Brad was saying something to the effect of, "Oh, I like to have the comments open on the side." And I was thinking, what? The only comments we see are the ones that you bring across, so I don't know what's going on. So it was because of our good pal Brad Alice.
Comments here?
Yeah, I had no idea that there were there are two buttons up here at the top. One that says private chat, and the other that says comments. I have entirely ignored those, probably because you and Ben are so cute. And I just can't take my eyes off of you. And so it's very difficult to move over to the right side of the screen. But there was something that one of the folks in the comment section that everybody else on this broadcast has always looked at, who said something to the effect that when he was at Texas Tech, Mahomes made some bonehead plays as well. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Growing, you're trying to work your way through the situation, trying to figure out what it is. And I think that's the gamble. And it's kind of like what Stephen Curry has done for the NBA, where now everybody thinks they're a three-point shooter, but they shoot about 22% from behind the arc. You have also a bunch of Mahomeses who, do you have Mahomes or do you have Kyler Murray? And there are a bunch of guys who also have all kinds of talent that can run all over the place and are changing the dynamic of football as we know it. And 4 times a game, they do something absolutely idiotic that drives you completely bonkers. And de Laura is in the latter category now. And we hope that he's somebody who can move into the smarter category that gives Arizona a better opportunity to limit its mistakes.
Shu, your wardrobe and the ambiance surrounding you is something that I think we're maybe not playing up enough right now. Now, when is the pink rugby shirt coming back?
Well, hey, the next broadcast I'm on, and hopefully I remember this because this is very important priority stuff. I have to have the Colombo art piece. And by the way, that's a print of only 250. So I have to have the Colombo art piece
for like 4 months there, Shu.
And I have to wear the pink. I have to break out the pink rugby jersey on the same night. Both of those are possible. So I will do my very best to remember on the next broadcast with which I am.
Maybe we can get Jayden de Laura a pink rugby jersey as well.
Yep. By the way, let's pull up by the numbers right here, put together by Jacob Franklin. All right. Well, other than the fact, can we take this remark off? Okay. Thank Robert Madrill. You're, outgained. I'm just doing this math in my head. You're 430 to 305. But
let's
that play a line right there. That's not going to work.
No, it's not going to work. And play a little game. Let's cover up the score and cover up that third line. Who's the better team? Who wins? Arizona, right?
Yeah.
But that third line is there, my friend. It is there.
Is it? Jacob Franklin, can you get rid of this third line? I think we win then.
I don't think so.
I believe Jacob Franklin can get rid of that.
A lot of editing on the fly right there.
Well, that would be very, very impressive. Overall, though,
Mike the Diva Luke constantly making it difficult on his staff.
Overall, by the way, Del Taco security camera, the official camera of SEC replays. Do not besmirch the Del Taco. I had the Del Taco Double Del today. Schuster, have you had the Del Taco Double Del yet?
It's been a while, but I was very impressed with last week's broadcast when you put Jeffries and Lovett on the spot.
I didn't eat all day yesterday, Mike, because I was busy up until like 7 p.m. So I had 2 Double Dells, and that was my food yesterday.
Franklin, for people out there that don't know what we're talking about, can we pull up the Lamont Lovett, Brian Jeffries trying the Del Taco cheeseburger? Right
there we go.
Here it is. So there's Brian, there's Lamont. They're both looking at me. The audio isn't great, but I'll give you the play-by-play right there. Look at this. Look at this. Oh, look at the goat. Look at the goat.
Man, I'm seeing like one of the comments that I just discovered. Man, you can see all kinds of NIL potential in this.
Yes.
Yeah, no, this
is riveting video too.
Brian Jeffries known for a very dry sense of humor and a fairly straight shooter. And when Brian Jeffries didn't even look at me and after the first bite said, "Not bad," I knew that he meant not bad.
Mhm.
Whereas most people, when they say not bad, this sucks.
Right. Well, Jeffrey's an honest guy. He conducts an honest broadcast, and that's one of the many reasons that he is the honest voice of the Wildcats. I was also impressed with Ben a little bit earlier, proclaiming his love for having 2 doubles at Del Taco by telling us that he's the only one who actually has a real job and bothers to work on a regular basis because he's out until 7 p.m. It was an excellent humble brag there, White.
That wasn't the intention, but I'll take it.
Way to put our lazy asses in our place.
Yeah, no, that's the way it is. But overall, getting back to the game right here, I am again, nobody likes the loss, especially how the loss happened. But I will say that I am stoked about just the overall direction of the program as I spit out just thinking of a Del Taco right there. Not spit in a bad way. But overall, though, the line is much bigger. The players are much bigger. You need to have a more steady QB play. But overall, I think things are definitely headed in the right trajectory. Like you said, Shu, and the escalator is going up. It's not one of those airport escalators that just sends you straight.
Yeah, this is one of those. You come out of this game frustrating because that's a great point.
Wow.
You come out of this game frustrated because Arizona was the better football team and probably should have won the game.
Right.
But I suspect as this season progresses, there's enough talent on this roster if they stick with it and clean it up that some of these post-game shows are going to be a little bit different, that the moral victory thing is not going to be a thing that's discussed, but instead it's an actual victory that's going to be discussed, where Arizona takes another step in a positive direction because they've beaten a legitimate conference foe that is having a very good year. Arizona certainly has the talent to be in most of the games that they're going to play this year, and obviously has the talent to win some of those as well. But if you're turning the ball over 5 times, that's not going to happen. If you don't do that, you put yourself in position to get some W's, and hopefully there are some happier post games in our future.
Ben White, what is your final synopsis, your autopsy, and a look ahead into the unknown?
Get your pen and paper ready. This is A+ wisdom right here. No, I think Shu's exactly right, and to build off of that, I think the talent is there. It's here quicker than I think a lot of us thought it would be. And it's really going to be, for me, the area that I'm watching game by game is that quarterback spot. I think the offensive line is solid, assuming they can stay healthy. By the way, Jordan Morgan, he's going to be an NFL player. I mean, we've said that for a while, but if he stays healthy, he is going to be a heck of a lineman. I mean, he had some plays tonight where he was able to really buy JDL some time there, just knocking it out, taking the mission to heart. So I think the lines are good. I think the talent is there on the defensive line. I think the talent is better all across the board. But I think from a quarterback standpoint, it's going to be a wild card for a little bit, potentially all year. I mean, JDL might end up being the reason why Arizona's winning or losing a lot of these games where, you could be up, in an opponent, and unfortunately turnovers could be your downfall, kind of like they were tonight. So that's what I'm going to be looking for, and it's not really going to be an answer that's going to be resolved here quickly, because you play UTEP. I get it, UTEP's better, but UTEP's not an SEC opponent.
For an upset.
Yeah, right. You go at Stanford. Stanford's terrible. I don't really care what happens there. But you go up against Washington, and if JDL is going to have a tough time, and if Arizona is in that game, right? If their defense holds up, they look good, they're able to somehow stay in the game, it becomes interesting if JDL is out stinking it up there. So we could very well be talking about and having the similar conversation in 2 weeks. Hopefully we're not, but we very well could. So this is a week-to-week team. It is a bit of a roller coaster at the quarterback spot, but they're very talented. If they can stay healthy, they're going to be better than people think for sure.
All right. For John Schuster again, Sean Schuster, when you come back here next week, obviously you know what you've got to do.
Come back next time, Mike Luke.
But again, with bringing around, again, they're 2 different items. I'm not going to even remind you. You need to be able to speak to this. Jose Vasquez, it does look like, I don't think it's serious, but it looks like Irby and Dalton Johnson got a little dinged up. Polito did not play. All right, Ben White, All you need to do is keep bringing yourself. If you could upgrade your microphone a little bit. Many people have complained about the microphone,
Yes,
including
I'm
great
sure.
Dick Franklin behind the scenes. So, but anyways, for everybody out there, obviously appreciate all of you in there. Great comments. We'll get more Del Taco talk in. Obviously, we've got to do that. John Schuster has announced that he understands what the comments section is. That is very, very good.
It's a huge night.
I do actually feel like you've missed out on tens of thousands of comments now, but we'll make up for lost time. Spread the word. But again, we'll talk with you guys next. Well, I'll be back with you Monday at 11 o'clock. But Ben, Shu, we'll be back with you next weekend. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.